Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
My beautiful son, Evan Smith, will still be dead. That is our life sentence.
Not enough time in prison. Loved ones of two young UBC students killed by a drunk driver say his sentence falls short. Plus,
we have had increased numbers of avian influenza cases.
parts of the Fraser Valley see a rise in avian flu, while dead birds have been found in a public park. And look who's winning.
I think that we're just, as a whole, again, a little bit more mature.
Vancouver Canucks players and fans revel in a recent run of success.
It touches the soul, man. I mean,
this is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Family members of two young UBC students killed by a drunk driver say the sentence handed to him today is not enough. They were in court to hear his punishment after the Crown and defense agreed on a 3-year prison term. As Karen Larson reports, the judge accepted their recommendation.
The 23-year-old man who pleaded guilty to killing two 18-year-olds in a car crash on the UBC campus 2 years ago has been sentenced to 3 years in federal jail. Tim Gerner was driving his BMW between 100 and 120 kilometers an hour when he lost control on a curve and hit first-year UBC students Emily Selwood and Evan Smith from behind as they walked on the sidewalk. Gerner was originally charged with 2 counts of impaired driving causing death, but pleaded guilty to 2 lesser counts of dangerous driving causing death, agreed to by Crown Counsel and his defense. Outside of court today, the mother of Evan Smith said she does not feel justice has been served.
After Tim Gerner's sentence is complete and he gets on with his life, my beautiful son, Evan Smith, will still be dead. That is our life sentence. That's all I have to say today.
The judge in this case called it extremely tragic, devastating, and heartbreaking. Victim impact statements from the parents of both Selwood and Smith were extremely emotional, describing 2 young and promising lives cut short and the absolute devastation left behind by their deaths. The judge accepted that Gerner was sincerely remorseful and encouraged the UBC engineering grad to use his experience to speak out against drinking and driving when he gets out of jail. Karen Larson, CBC News, Richmond.
Road repairs are beginning in Delta this week for the Highway 17A overpass over Highway 99. It was damaged after an overheight vehicle smashed into it in July. The Transportation Ministry says the repairs are extensive and will involve demolition. They could take up to 2 months. Construction begins on Thursday with detours and partial lane closures in the evenings, but drivers can also expect some big traffic changes. Highway 99 will be closed southbound from November 17th at 9 p.m. to November 19th at 3 p.m. Full closures of the damaged north side of the Highway 17A structure will also start on November 17th until that project is finished. And an update for you on Highway 3, which was closed near Karamias. It is now reopened after a rock slide forced it to be shut earlier this week. Geotechnical crews have now deemed it safe, and an evacuation order has been lifted. People forced from their homes will be allowed to return starting tomorrow after electricity and internet service have been restored. 1 year has now passed since Mayor Brenda Locke was sworn in as head of Surrey. She came to power vowing to keep the RCMP. That led to a showdown with the province. Justin McElroy spoke with Locke and has more on her battle-scarred first year.
Does Surrey get the respect it deserves?
We are not getting the kind of attention that we must get for our residents. We're not getting our fair share of infrastructure dollars. Do I think we're getting the supports from other levels of government in Surrey? Absolutely not.
That is Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke in an interview we did to mark her 1 year in power. And her argument is a familiar one to those living south of the Fraser, the idea that Surrey is the fastest growing city, but doesn't get the funding it needs.
When you talk about Metro Vancouver, they can't live without us. They can't live without us. The economic engine of this region is Surrey by far.
Now, you can make that argument, but that attention and those dollars come from the province. A province that Surrey is taking legal action against to try and keep the RCMP, and where Locke has said this about the public safety minister.
I absolutely think there is misogyny going on, no doubt in my mind.
So we asked Locke if attacking the province on one hand hurts her ability to ask for more money and respect on the other. Her answer?
Well, I sure hope not. I make no excuses for or apologies for fighting for my residents, and I will fight for them because this is about taxpayers' dollars, this is about accountability, and this is about affordability, and I will not apologize for that.
And she doesn't have to, but it's a particularly thin tightrope to walk as Surrey enters its 6th year now of policing paralysis. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Advocates and tenants of single-room occupancy units were at the BC Court of Appeal today in support of the City of Vancouver. The city is appealing a ruling by the BC Supreme Court that quashed bylaws meant to limit how much property owners could increase the rents of SROs between tenancies. If the city's appeal is successful, the SRO vacancy control bylaw will once again be in effect.
If we get the vacancy control that we want, the SRO rent control that we want, and if the court backs us up, then it'll mean that when tenants leave, the new tenant coming in will pay the same rent.
Appeal has reserved its decision after today's arguments, and it's not clear when it will issue a ruling. Several areas in the Fraser Valley are now seeing an uptick in avian flu. 6 locations have been added to the provincial watch list today. All of the listed outbreaks in BC are located in commercial poultry farms, but the Fraser Valley Regional District is asking people to be careful in public parks and to report dead birds to the provincial wild bird reporting line. The city of Chilliwack has collected over 100 carcasses from Sardis Park and sent them for flu testing.
We have a testing center, of course, in the city of Abbotsford that is working 24/7 on the testing aspect. We have had increased numbers of avian influenza cases, but we are prepared.
While risk of transmission to people is low, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency recommends anyone working with poultry to wear protective clothing like face masks, goggles, gloves, and boots. The BC government is now proposing more changes to housing development. Under legislation rolled out today, developers will pay cities set fees for community amenities at the start of the building process. Emily Vance explains.
Right now, developers negotiate on fees to fund things like rec centers, daycares, and libraries with municipalities during the rezoning process. Today's proposed changes would mean that developers know those costs up front. The new legislation would require municipalities to set fees and decide where the money goes ahead of time.
This new tool allows for that to be done in a transparent way in the front end so they can get the dollars they need for that infrastructure, and it takes away the negotiating that takes often, sometimes years to get housing built.
But not all municipalities are happy with the changes. Eric Woodward, mayor of the township of Langley, said they already had a set fee system in place. The changes mean they would need to get their fees approved ahead of time by the province, something the mayor says gives them less flexibility.
Applying this one-size-fits-all program to every municipality really is fundamentally unfair as far as we're concerned. And they've been doing it without any consultation with municipalities like mine at all.
But for developers, the changes mean more certainty to know what they'll have to pay earlier on in the process.
So that everybody understands how they're going to fund the impacts that come with higher density. And this will provide that direction, and that's what we're supportive of.
The legislation has yet to be approved. Emily Vance, CBC News, Victoria.
Meanwhile, some of Canada's premiers want to stop Ottawa from cutting funding deals directly with cities and towns. They're threatening to bring in legislation to prevent that. As Marina von Stackelberg reports, it comes as the federal government is giving out billions to encourage the construction of new, affordable homes.
Canada's premiers say any federal money to build housing should go through them first. They're threatening to pass laws to prevent Ottawa from funding cities directly.
There's a shared concern that there is a federal government that is increasingly looking at the potential political benefits, for lack of a better term, of circumventing the provinces and landing in a Toronto or Vancouver and dropping a housing program strictly for political gain.
It comes as Ottawa has begun cutting deals with cities to build more homes fast. Up for grabs, $4 billion.
And if you're coming into a province with projects, then we'll ask, I guess, to be involved. But if that's not working, then we'll legislate that we need to be involved.
The premiers want what Quebec has. A law there says money from Ottawa for municipalities must flow through the provincial government first. Canada's housing minister says this is the first time he's heard the premier's concerns.
I see no reasonable excuse to stop working directly with municipalities if we're actually achieving progress with the strategy that we've adopted.
The federal money is contingent on cities changing their zoning bylaws to allow for denser housing that can be approved more quickly.
The sooner that we can get the funds from the federal government in a manner that's easy and quick is what I'm looking for.
Halifax's mayor says Nova Scotia's government has slowed down federal funding for transit before. He doesn't want to see that happen with housing.
The province didn't match the money, and it took them 8 months or so just to pass through the money from the federal government. So does it slow things down if you go through the province? Of course it does.
Again, just as we're starting to get momentum, just as the housing accelerator was starting to show progress, we now have provinces trying to block it, and I think that's unfortunate.
Hundreds of applications for the federal money have been submitted. 7 deals have been reached. The housing minister says he won't let anything slow him down from building desperately needed housing fast. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
A CBC Marketplace investigation is showing a very personal view of how hard it can be for wheelchair users to fly in this country. It follows numerous stories we've shared with you about Air Canada's treatment of passengers who use wheelchairs. Travis Danraz shows us a hidden camera video raising questions about staff training and passenger safety, and a warning people may find images in the story upsetting.
I've been in a wheelchair my whole life.
Marketplace followed Alessia DiVirgilio and her support person Erica Katzman, hidden cameras rolling from Toronto to Charlottetown, then back on Air Canada.
Part of my disability affects all my muscles, and so as a result, it's difficult for me to breathe.
People are separated from their wheelchairs to fly. We document the tube connected to Alessia's ventilator being briefly disconnected during a transfer. And this.
Sorry. Oh, you okay?
It's her feet. Air Canada workers struggle with a lift.
Please, guys, please.
It's not from here? Like even this, it's supposed to turn. Oh, there we go. See.
The lift tips and hits her on the head.
It's really hard to watch. It's extremely hard to watch.
Jeff Preston is an accessibility advocate. Do you think that Air Canada needs to up its training regime when it comes to staff?
Absolutely.
Air Canada wouldn't comment on DiVirgilio's specific case, but did say they reached out to her to apologize. It told Marketplace the vast majority of passengers with mobility needs travel without issue, and in those relatively rare instances where barriers were encountered, we moved quickly to address concerns. The Minister for Persons with Disabilities is Kamal Khera. These are real people that say that they feel like they're an afterthought. They want action, and they're not seeing that.
Let me first reiterate that's absolutely unacceptable. And do we need to do better? Absolutely.
After showing the minister our findings, the federal government is now summoning Air Canada here to Parliament Hill. That meeting is scheduled for Thursday. Travis Danraz, CBC News, Ottawa.
The BC government has now acquired 109 hectares of land to expand 5 provincial parks. That includes 64 hectares at Nakoon Park on Haida Gwaii, over 33 hectares in Wells Grey Provincial Park, over 8 hectares in Gladstone Park, 3 hectares in Bowron Lake Park, and just under a hectare in Mount Pope Park. The province says it is including First Nations governments in making decisions about establishing the lands as parks and protected areas. Darius Madavi joins us for a first look at the weather. Sun, blue sky, very windy today. Thank you.
Yes, definitely windy. It was very much gusting above 60 kilometers per hour for some parts of the lower mainland and parts of both the west coast and east coast of the island. So a windy day, not expecting to see that return tomorrow, although as we have a cold front move in on Thursday, we may see some strong winds accompanying that as well for different reasons than we saw the winds here, where it was more of that high pressure moving in. Now, you can see the effect of that high pressure system, that ridge that's been building in over the province, because other than once those showers parted last night, those flurries, for the most part, we were looking dry across BC today until just recently when we had a little bit of snow start to pop up in central BC. But that's just those sort of scattered showers and flurries that sneak in under that ridge of high pressure. But for the most part, we were looking dry. That'll continue into the next 24 hours or so. But tomorrow, late tomorrow, we see that major system start to come in from the Pacific, rolling over Haida Gwaii and reaching the north and central coast by late tomorrow. And then by Thursday morning, it does roll to the south coast as well, breaking into the interior, bringing some snow on the higher elevations. Those mountain passes are expected to get a fairly good dump over on Thursday as well because of that system that's rolling through. But for tonight, we do just have a few more lingering showers that may or may not pop up, not looking too likely. And here in Vancouver, we're looking still dry into tomorrow morning. So enjoy the bit of cloud until... Sorry.
Strong gusty winds.
Yeah.
No? Ignore that?
No strong gusty winds.
Avert your eyes, children.
Sorry guys. There we go. This is the forecast.
Thanks, Darius.
Thanks.
Well, it was a concept that proved lucrative a few years back, but in 2023 and the push to work from home, not so much. The biggest player in co-working spaces, WeWork, has gone belly up. WeWork was once valued at $47 billion, but has now filed for bankruptcy protection. It's struggled with value and growth through the years. The company has 5 locations in Canada, including 2 in Vancouver and 1 in Burnaby. Now it's aiming to get out of those leases as it tries to balance its books. The company says it is optimistic, though, it can refocus for future growth. The Vancouver Canucks are off to the team's best start in, wait for it, franchise history. Welcome news for many rabid fans who have endured some tough years, to say the least, and some sports bars say they're also seeing a boost. As John Hernandez reports, it's still early in the season, but belief in this squad is building.
To the side, Pettersson, Besser scores!
A spirited win against the Edmonton Oilers on Monday put the Vancouver Canucks near the top of the NHL.
I think that we're just, as a whole, again, a little bit more mature.
I think we just know the way that we need to play.
The team's 9-2-1 record marks the best start to the season in franchise history.
The building on a Monday night, to see it rocking like that, it just it almost brings a tear to the eye. Everybody's just excited to see what this team can do, if this success can last.
Fans like Tej Dhaliwal reinvigorated after years of belief and disappointment.
Seeing everything that we hoped for and kept believing in, to see it come to fruition, to see it being realized, it touches the soul, man. I mean, it's so exciting to be a Canucks fan again.
Enthusiasm that local bars and restaurants have been missing too. Here at the Shark Club near Rogers Arena, staff have seen noticeably bigger crowds on game night.
We typically will see, the fans come out, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before the game starts. And we've been seeing, traction as early as 3.5 hours. And a lot of people from out of town really, wanting to be part of that experience.
A smooth start, but there's also signs that not all fans are convinced. Business is still quiet in this downtown Vancouver jersey store.
This year, we're finding out it's a little bit slow. I don't know whether it's the economy or people maybe still waiting for them to win another 10 games.
Maybe a wait-and-see approach for some fans, but analysts say the future looks promising.
So there's a real standard, there's a real bar internally that we're seeing with this team, and you can see that within the 60-minute game that they're playing, that they're a resilient bunch, but they're sticking true to their identity, which is a hard-working team.
Let's keep our fingers crossed that everything goes well and continues to go well for this team, because it's been a long time coming.
A lot of hockey left to play, with adversity sure to come for a team sparking belief once again. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Vancouver Whitecaps, meanwhile, were eliminated from Major League Soccer playoffs on Sunday after losing to Los Angeles FC at BC Place. Now head coach Vanni Sartini is facing backlash for comments he made about referee Tim Ford's performance. Speaking after the Caps loss, Sartini said, quote, "If they found Ford in False Creek, then I'm going to be a suspect. I'm not saying that I would do it. I'm saying I'm the first suspect. It's different," end quote. Those comments were made before the news conference was being recorded, but sports journalist Harjo Hall was in the room.
He obviously did not mean any ill will to referee Tim Ford. That's his kind of nature. He's a very emotional guy. Obviously, when that is online and people can see it, they have their different opinions, and then someone can see it this way, someone can see it that way. So I can see how it kind of took on a life of its own.
The union representing MLS soccer referees has called Sartini's post-match comments disgusting, arguing that rhetoric against officials is harmful. Sartini addressed what happened today.
I'm sorry. I should have done a better judgment to choose the right word, and but there was no malicious intent.
The league is reviewing Sartini's comments as well as the game. And just before the break, we would like to offer an apology to you, our viewers. Last night at the beginning of our newscast, we had a technical glitch that caused some strong language, to say the least, to air. We are sorry, and we fixed the problem. November is Financial Literacy Month. After the break, we'll be joined by an expert in studio with tips on how to have that money talk with your kids. Stick around. Thanks for joining our commercial-free live stream tonight. A group from Lethbridge, Alberta is the only Canadian high school team competing in a global synthetic biology competition in Paris. The CBC's Osei Irete has more.
Let's get started. So we're gonna grab our pipette, and then we're just gonna grab a tip, and you're gonna press down on this, put this in. Now you've got your fluid, push down, and then press down on this end. There we go.
You guys have to do this a lot for your project, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what is the project?
So basically, our project was kind of making a platform that uses a protein biosensor.
So once our biosensor detects velvet disease in water, it'll change from TS purple to AS pink.
In simple terms, it's kind of like a pH strip, but for diseases.
Yeah. We also like to compare it sometimes to like a pregnancy test, just like whatever sample is there, and then it changes color and tells you if that you have velvet fish disease or not.
It was a great opportunity to just learn about a lot of different things, not only like biology and lab work, but also coding, community outreach with like interviews and all that.
Close that up.
We have an amazing leader. Her name is Laura.
There you go. Okay. I was like, oh.
iGEM is really unique in that we target high school students and we get them to do a huge science project for 10 months out of the year.
I'm gonna get a new shot, I'm sorry.
We've had a high school iGEM program since 2012, and we've been the only team consistently competing at the high school level in Canada since then.
Well, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel good that we've managed to put a team together consistently over the past decade and compete, but also very sad because it's something that I think it should be across Canada.
I have chem. The things that we're doing now in my chem class, I've already learned in iGEM, which is really helpful just to understand better, and I know it'll help me in future years, and if I choose to pursue biochem.
I used to be like really shy and really bad at presenting and everything like that, but we've had a lot of presentations. We were preparing like for the competition with like answering questions and all that, and it's just really helped me become more confident in front of people.
The team presented to judges today, and we'll find out where they stand on Saturday. Osei Irete, CBC News, Lethbridge.
November marks Financial Literacy Month, and amid rising cost of living problems, it's important for children and teenagers to learn more about spending and budgeting. To share some tips on how parents and guardians can have the money talk with their kids, we're now joined by Laura Hine. She is a strategic wealth management leader with Hine Consulting and a volunteer with Junior Achievement of BC. Thanks very much for coming in today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I am so privileged to be here because this topic is my passion project.
So when it comes to passion projects like this, what's the first step for talking about kids and money?
Not talking about money. So my recommendation is ask your children about the ideas and dreams they have already. They may not know about the jobs, professions, things that they want to do, maybe they do, but they definitely have some ideas about what might be in their future. So talk to them about what they're interested in and then work the math backwards so that you can make it far more relatable to the things that they imagine.
And when can you start these conversations? How early?
So I'm as early as when they're talking, have conversations. Children already have ideas about the toys that they want. So so you can talk to them about what those toys cost and what it took to earn it.
Now, it can be challenging, for example, to give your child, once they've reached the age that a parent or guardian decides, the debit card or a credit card. How do you work in the idea around responsibility? Because we know it's not a toy.
Absolutely. So I love having money in hand for children that don't already have a bank account or you can't pass them the Visa card. So give them the opportunity to see that money and to be able to spend that money. Engage them. There's three things that I would recommend that parents, educators, and students do. Engage, inspire, and plan. So what are you doing today to engage, inspire, or plan anything that would be related to one's finances?
And you mentioned educators. What can schools do, teachers, to engage students when it comes to budgeting and learning about responsible money handling?
So there's two things they can do. So the first is, as I mentioned, ask your students about what they imagine doing so that you can make it relatable. Say, what would those things cost you and how would you achieve that? How would you work for that? How would you loan for that? Would the cost of the loan be? There is an amazing program through JABC that does exactly that assists educators with bringing that information into the classroom and making it available to all grades, K to 12.
Right. Laura Hine, Hine Consulting, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Mixed feelings. Canadians fleeing Gaza think about what they're leaving behind. Their stories are next.
Gary Gillespie took a day off work today. He's a civil servant with the federal government. He's going to do more with his day off than just stack wood. Gillespie has done some strange things in his 30 years, but not as strange as today. Although he'd have you believe he's just a regular guy.
Cover your eyes, ladies. I've been pretty nervous this morning. I could have forgotten anything.
Regular guys don't attract crowds at shopping malls, and they definitely don't get their bodies painted with honey. And this is just for starters.
I'm beginning to like this. That's what scares me.
There's the rub, and the reason. Gary Gillespie is doing it for money. $1,070 from a radio station for carrying out the wildest stunt. And honey alone wouldn't be enough. Bring on the feathers. Honeyed and feathered, he's off for a 2-mile tricycle ride down Victoria's main street. And at the end of it all, he's going to eat 25 hard-boiled eggs in 60 minutes. That's one every 2.5 minutes, or he doesn't get his check.
$500 an hour, I'm gonna do it. You got a rope? You got a throw line?
Gillespie once jumped out of an airplane wearing a Superman suit and a parachute, but he probably didn't get the stares he's getting today.
It's exactly 1 o'clock. Dig in.
And now for the hard part, the hard-boiled eggs. All 25 of them. He says he did this once before, a long time ago. But this is no easy feat.
See? One more to go, guys. This is it, the last one. This is it, guys. Half an egg to go. Go, go, go.
He does it, with at least a minute to spare. He says he'll have no trouble spending the money. And we know how he can get rid of the eggs. But the honey and feathers? No one was offering him a ride home. Wayne Williams, CBC News, Victoria.
Today, the first group of Canadians stuck inside Gaza were able to leave. Once they make the crossing, they'll be bused 400 kilometers to Cairo. As Tom Perry tells us, they will then have just days to get home or make other arrangements.
There were 80 Canadian names on the list published by the Palestinian Border Authority today. That's 80 Canadians who were given permission to cross from Gaza through the Rafah crossing into Egypt. Now, there were no Canadians on any of the lists published last week by the Border Authority. That did lead to questions as to why Canada had none of its citizens coming over when other countries were getting their citizens out of Gaza. The government says that it had been hoping to have more Canadians. Canada's ambassador to Egypt said initially, before the border shut down unexpectedly over the weekend, the plan was for two groups of Canadians to come through, one of over 200. So instead of having more than 400 Canadians coming through, today we saw just 80 Canadian names on that list. Now, CBC News did have a freelance camera operator on the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing. He spoke to some of the Canadians making that journey, and here's some of what they had to say.
I was able to get my two daughters and my wife names on the Canadian list after a lot of trials. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get my parents' names and my sister's names on the list as well. So I left them in Gaza in such a horrible situation. So I call upon all the Canadians related to the government or the foreign ministry to work on getting the first family out of Gaza as well, because I was in such a difficult situation to choose between leaving with my own family, small family, and leave my parents behind.
And for those Canadians, getting through the border crossing is just one leg of their journey. They're going to be met up with buses from the Canadian Embassy. They'll be brought here to Cairo. They'll have 3 days to get their papers in order, and after that, they've got to move on either to Canada or elsewhere, but that does still leave hundreds of other Canadians still in Gaza who are trying to get out, trying to get to safety. Tom Perry, CBC News, Cairo.
Well, the war between Israel and Hamas has now moved into its second month. The fighting has intensified almost daily as Israel retaliates for the Hamas assault on October 7th. And as Ellen Morrow tells us, there are no signs the siege of Gaza will end anytime soon.
You may remember in the aftermath of the October 7th attacks, seeing destroyed vehicles by the Nova Music Festival site and the various kibbutzes that were attacked as well. Well, this is where so many of them have been brought. There are hundreds of cars here at this lot in southern Israel. This is a really stark reminder of what happened on that day a month ago. We spoke to one investigator here who said that today the emotions here are particularly heavy. Now, we're also hearing from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today, making his clearest comments yet on what he sees for the future of Gaza after the fighting is over.
I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility, because we've seen what happens when we don't have it, when we don't have that security responsibility.
Netanyahu was also asked about the growing calls for there to be a ceasefire in this conflict. He says there won't be any general ceasefire until the more than 200 hostages being held by Hamas are freed. The Israel Defense Forces say overnight that they took over a Hamas stronghold in the north of Gaza, that they've hit a weapons depot near the Al-Quds hospital in Gaza City. We have seen strikes in the area of Al-Quds in recent days. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society saying those strikes have injured dozens of people inside the hospital and those sheltering around it. Israel says that shows how Hamas, its allegation that Hamas uses civilian infrastructure to shield its military positions and its fighters. So the fighting rages on. We're hearing from the UN today as well. UNRWA, which is the largest UN aid agency in Gaza, it posted on X, formerly Twitter, to mark 1 month of war, talking about how people are struggling to find supplies, being bombed in their homes, referring to what's happening in Gaza as forcible displacement and a tragedy of colossal proportions. Calls for a ceasefire continue to become more loud by the day as the humanitarian crisis in Gaza worsens. But that was, as I said, rejected by Prime Minister Netanyahu, who says that after what happened here in southern Israel on October 7th, that Israel must defeat Hamas. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Southern Israel.
Job postings don't always say what the salary range is, but Ontario says providing that information is a way to cut down on the gender pay gap. It's following BC's lead on sharing the numbers. As Lorenda Redekop reports, though, some aren't convinced that change will help.
Provincial numbers show women, on average, earn 87 cents for every dollar a man makes. The Minister of Labour is proposing a change he says can fix that.
Including salary ranges with job postings can help close the gender pay gap while allowing companies to find qualified candidates faster and improve retention.
The province of British Columbia recently made the same change for all job ads as of November 1st.
Transparency is good, but it's not going to solve problems.
Law professor Valerio De Stefano would like to see full disclosure of what people are actually paid.
If a company has a great candidate and they want to offer more than the salary range that they initially published, they are still going to do that, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if those decisions are affected by gender, for instance, this is not going to solve the gender wage gap.
He says the pay gap among women and men doing the same job is only one part of the problem. The jobs traditionally done by women are less valued. He says a hospital nurse, for example, is often paid less than an accountant. The government also plans to require companies to disclose when they're using AI, artificial intelligence, in their hiring process.
This will make Ontario one of the first jurisdictions, along with a handful of others in North America, to do this.
A few years ago, an AI program used by Amazon was unintentionally biased against women. Once again, De Stefano says more than just disclosing the use of the program is needed.
This is Amazon, so it's a giant tech company. Imagine a run-of-the-mill employer that just buy or leases this software without understanding anything on how they work. The risk these employers are sitting on are enormous.
The government says it will introduce legislation soon on these proposed changes. The opposition would like to see more done to address gender wage gaps. And it wants to see enforcement, reporting, and tracking to ensure greater pay equity. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Parts of East Africa are reeling from heavy rains and flooding. The impact on Somalia and Kenya is coming up.
You can take Nigerians out of Nigeria, but you can never take Nigerian food out of Nigerians. And my name is Veronica Kumbiolaliri. I am the chef owner of Anke's Kitchen. Oh, wow. Nigerians love Nigerian food. Food is the energy that brings us together. Food is the love that showcases who we truly are. Nigeria is very diverse with different people, with different traditions. food brings us all together. October 1st is Nigerian Independence Day, and that is where the Heritage Month came about. I was so grateful when it was announced that we're going to be getting October as Nigerian Heritage Month here. It took me back to like when I was 5 years old. October was the most festive season, just like Christmas, when Nigerians come together and celebrate independence. We're all dressed in different cultural attires, dancing and in excitement and joy, and with so many different types of food. This is a kingfish. We call it kingfish. And then we also work with momo. So this is cow skin. This is what it looks like. Every Nigerian household has bell peppers. Just some part of Nigerians that eat a spicy pepper. But bell pepper is like every household you go to. Spinach is also very big. We cook our spinach until I got to Canada and I was like, oh, people actually drink spinach? So that was very new to me. I was raised with my food. I didn't get myself exposed to different other type of Nigerian food until I decided I wanted to start a restaurant. I'm from the West. We work with a lot of grains, we work with a lot of vegetables, we work with a lot of meats. I'm talking about fish, beef, chicken, talking about goat meat, we use a lot of lamb. We have like the varieties, but the creation of it is actually what brings out the tradition of Nigeria. It's how you can use the same ingredients in Yoruba to create something completely different among the Igbo people. We would have customers that would say, can you make egusi soup? Egusi soup is a soup made from melon, but every tribe in Nigeria eats egusi soup, and everyone makes it differently. We have a lot of people that will come in and say, where are you guys from? We say we're Nigerian, but then where in Nigeria? What food is this? So a lot of people want to know, a lot of people want to engage. They want to know the culture, they want to know where the food is from, and just to bond, to feel more connected to the food and the people. I'm so proud to be Nigerian. Everything that I am today is all because of the culture, the people, the community, the base that surrounds me. Nigeria is a beautiful, beautiful country with beautiful people that has beautiful hearts and are willing to share and help other people grow.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Mark your calendars. CBC's annual Food Bank Day is coming up on December 1st. Kick off the holiday season by watching our full day of special programming, streaming online at cbc.ca/foodbankday and on CBC Gem. It's all for an important cause: local food banks across BC. For more information, head to cbc.ca/foodbankday. We'll see you December 1st. Heavy rains have triggered deadly flooding in Kenya and Somalia, and UN officials say more than 100,000 people have been forced from their homes. At least 25 people were killed in Somalia, 15 in Kenya, after intense downpours set off flooding that wiped out homes, roads, and bridges. Rescuers are now trying to reach 2,400 people in southern Somalia who are trapped in their homes. The heavy rains come a year after Somalia's worst drought in 40 years that pushed the country to the brink of famine. The United Nations says extreme dry conditions, ongoing violence, and rising food prices have left as many as 43,000 people dead. Darius Madavi is back with our forecast. First, though, what's the situation in Africa?
Unfortunately, it looks like this isn't going to be easing off anytime soon. So if you take a look here, you can see the amount of rainfall that fell leading up to today. So over the last 4 days or so, we see this much rainfall build up, well over 100 millimeters in some places. As we look to the future, even more rain building up. This isn't going to let off anytime soon. And in part, that's because of what's bringing all this rain. Now, El Nino usually means a wetter season for East Africa. And in addition, there are conditions over the Indian Ocean that can also mean a wetter season. So in 2015, 2016, the last El Nino event, we saw flooding in these regions in Somalia, especially in 2019. We saw that again as we saw that those favorable wet conditions over the Indian Ocean. This year, we're seeing both of those things happen at the same time, meaning for over the next wet season, right through the end of December, we're not expecting to see rains like this let up. So even though rivers are already quite full to bursting, it's not going to be changing anytime soon. And if you take a look here, you can see all that moisture over the last 4 days feeding into this area, the Horn of Africa, which is also one of the areas most vulnerable to climate change, according to many different studies on the subject. Look at the next 4 days here. You can see that moisture continuing to stream in. This is the sort of thing that we're expecting, this massive swings from drought, which was happening for the last 4 years, to flooding like this. And so that's not going to be letting off anytime soon. Now, if we turn here in BC, we're not looking at anything that extreme. We are going to see some rain, but we do have a wind warning in place right now for Haida Gwaii and parts of the north coast. That's really all we're looking at in terms of extreme weather here in the province today, or heading into tomorrow, sorry. So this is for tomorrow morning. Gusts, winds up to 90 kilometers per hour, gusts up to 120. And then if we look into tomorrow morning, you can see some of this moisture starting to build into the province. Now, we do have this ridge of high pressure. It has moved further east now, so it's mostly over the interior, but we do see some of these showers that are sneaking in despite that high pressure, and these flurries as well for the higher elevations. But for tomorrow during the day, we're looking pretty dry across the province. It's not until late tomorrow that we see that next system impact Haida Gwaii and the north coast, and then build its way further south as we get later into Thursday. So expect a fairly heavy rains Thursday night or Thursday during the day over the south coast, especially for the west coast of the island. But it's not until probably tomorrow that we'll get a better idea of just how much rain will fall and exactly where. So for tomorrow, just expect mostly cloudy skies for the coast, bit of showers, especially in the morning, but clearing up for the more southern parts of the south coast, including here in Vancouver in the afternoon. And then we see mostly sunshine in the interior, with the exception of some flurries popping up for central BC. And then here, again, no gusty winds tomorrow morning, fortunately. We do have a bit of rain in the morning, but clearing up for the afternoon. So those morning showers that are possible should be pretty much it. And then quite a wet forecast ahead still, Dan.
No kidding. Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
Canada's environment watchdog says the federal government is continuing to fall short on its commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In a new audit released today, it says Ottawa's current plan would not allow this country to reach its targets in 2030. David Thurton has more on the report and the reaction.
The window for achieving Canada's climate goals is closing, and a new report says Ottawa is set to miss the mark.
What we're saying is the measures in the current plan are not sufficient to meet the target.
Environment Commissioner Jerry DeMarco says his latest audit continues to sound the alarm. Canada is not on track, he says, to meet its 2030 greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. The target commits Ottawa to achieving at least a 40% emissions reduction below 2005 levels by the end of this decade. Government modeling shows Canada is projected to have at least a 6% shortfall.
They can't just have a hope to fill those in with assumptions and so on. They'll need measures that will actually fill that gap.
I agree with the Commissioner. We need to do more. We need to do it faster, and that's exactly what our government is doing.
Canada's Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault says Ottawa will soon bring in a cap on oil and gas emissions and stricter rules to stop methane gas leaks.
We can't go back. We can't do like Pierre Poilievre say and show up here to this microphone and say, I have no plan to work on climate change.
Conservatives say today's audit makes it clear Canada won't achieve its targets and the Liberal carbon pricing system has failed.
Well, just this morning, the Environment Commissioner confirmed that this government's so-called climate plan is nothing more than a punishing tax on heat, gas, and groceries.
The Environment Commissioner says carbon pricing has the ability to achieve deep emissions cuts if it is strict enough. And although we might not be on track to achieve our emissions targets, there is still time, he says, to course correct. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
A hat that has not seen the head of its owner for more than 200 years is expected to fetch close to $1 million at an auction in France. There it is, that hat worn by Napoleon Bonaparte, self-proclaimed Emperor of France, will go on sale later this month in Paris. The black tri-corner beaver felt hat became a trademark of the military leader. Napoleon wore it parallel to his shoulders, unlike most officers in the day, to distinguish himself from others on the battlefield. Call it improv with a twist. Hypnosis. We meet Colin Mockery and a man who puts the audience under after this.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On December 7th, join CBC Vancouver's Dan Burritt at the Alumni UBC webinar, Finding Joy in Climate Action. Experts will discuss what climate actions we can take that could also impact our well-being. And enjoy the seasonal celebration of quiet reflection and jubilant hope with Christmas with Corleone on December 15th, 16th, and 18th. Tickets at corleone.org.
You know him from the hit improv show Whose Line Is It Anyway? Among other things he's done. Canada's own Colin Mockery is in town for a show with a twist. Hypnosis. It's called, naturally, Hypprov. And on this evening at the Vogue Theatre downtown, sounds like they're going to have a sold-out show. Colin Mockery, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
And you are joined by Assad Mekki hypnotist, hopefully to the stars?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
Why not? So what can people expect, Colin, I'll start with you, when they come to this show? No signing waivers, anything like that? What are
They can expect nothing, because it's the unexpected that's going to happen. We get 20 people, 20 volunteers, rush the stage. Assad hypnotizes them, gets it down to the best 4 or 5, then I and them form an instant improv troupe, do an improv show, various games, and it's wacky, fun, and hilarious.
So, Assad, how deep do people get into this? And how quickly does it take?
So I will tell you, we get rushed all the time. When I call for volunteers, people run up on stage. I've got to bat them back with a broomstick, basically. I'm calibrating them. So when they get hypnotized on stage, I'm looking for changes in rate and location of respiration. So breathing changes, skin color changes, skin tonus changes, lacrimation of the eyes, so the eyes start to tear up, vasodilation, the capillaries in the eyes become engorged. So yeah, they're pretty tranced out up on stage.
And is that relatively instantaneous? Like, how long does that take?
The process takes about 5 minutes. People naturally go in and out of trance states all the time. You go in and out of a trance state approximately 4 times an hour, daydreaming. Another example would be you watch a horror movie. You get so caught up in what you're watching that you're moved to a physiological response. Your heart starts to race, your palms get sweaty. Logically, you know what you're watching on the big screen is not real, but for that moment in time, it feels really real. That describes exactly what occurs up on stage.
And where does the comedy come in? What about hypnosis lends itself to some comedy?
What's great about this is when I'm working with improvisers like the guys from Who's Line, you know, we all have a common background. So even though we're making it up, I know in a general sense where they're heading in a scene. I don't have that with these people because they're just constantly reacting to everything Assad and I say. So there's no end game to them. They're not thinking, oh, this is how we could end the scene. No, they just keep giving information. And some of the most random information you'll ever get. So that makes it fun for me, trying to piece it together and try to make it make sense. But most of the time it doesn't. It's just fun.
And there's no plans. We've never met any of these people before. They're just random volunteers from Vancouver or whatever city we play. They come up on stage and we make an instant improv troupe right there before the audiences, right before their very eyes.
Any standout moments, ideas, segments, segues that have happened?
Yeah, I mean, every night there's something. There was one, we do a superhero. I was looking for a sidekick. I'm a superhero. We get from the audience the Gibraltar Kid. So this guy comes up and I said, so you're the Gibraltar Kid. What's your power? You become hard like a rock? He goes, no, I have residency in Gibraltar. And I went, what? He goes, yeah, anything happens there, I can take care of it. But just Gibraltar. I said, but I'm in North America. I can't work there. So it took the scene into a whole different direction, something that an experienced improviser I don't think would have thought of.
Amazing. And for those who are interested in perhaps if they can't go tonight, what other shows are you playing and where?
Tomorrow night it will be Nanaimo. The following will be Campbell River, I believe.
Sydney, for 3 nights in Sydney, then off to Calgary and Sherwood Park.
In Edmonton, yeah.
Wow. And what sort of response have you had so far?
It's been great. I mean, the crowd has been so receptive to the shows. And as well, we've been written up in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Time Out, New Yorker. We did an off-Broadway run and it went fantastic. We now have a residency in Las Vegas. So we were just in Vegas performing at Harrah's. We're going to be back performing in Vegas December 5th through the 9th. So it's been fantastic.
That's awesome. Assad Mekki, Colin Mockery, thanks for coming in. Have fun.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
A special dog is being celebrated in the Kootenays today. West, the Labrador Retriever, is retiring from the RCMP after 6 years of loyal service. Have a look.
West is about 9 years old, and we've had him since 2017 in these programs. He came to us from PADS, which is the Pacific Assistance Dog Society, fully trained as a 2-year-old, and he is just a really sweet, lovely dog. He's really calm and really generous, and he's really calming for people. He loves to lie on people's feet and help them stay grounded in situations where their emotions are really running high. He approaches people with such non-judgmental, loving brown eyes, and he really melts people into the moment that they're in instead of being kind of floating back into their traumas.
On a day-to-day basis, he would come to the detachment with me, and he is there to help support anybody coming in for interviews. In the beginning, we were doing on-call work, so if there was an instance where we needed to be out on call, and if there happened to be an accident or a sudden death, then West and I would come and help the members be able to do their job, and then he would be able to help anybody who's in need at that time.
Wanting to know if they had done a bit of a celebration for him, and Jesse and Katie had said no, they didn't. So I kind of thought, well, he's been such a big part of our community that he should have something, and something should be done to honor him. So I proceeded to check with our organization and make sure it would be okay that we could do that, and so that's how it kind of came to be.
Good dog. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can see our newscast on CBC Gem, the free app, as well as on YouTube, and of course our website, cbc.ca/BC. I will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. We'll see you then. Good night.